Paul Knox. He's the executive director of United Way of Thurston County, which is in Olympia. He's going to tell you about an exciting project that they have going there. He's also my landlord and helps provide the support we get from Sarah. So be extra nice to him because I like my office. So, okay? With that?
All right.
Oh, there's a clicker here for you. So just forward back.
Hi, folks. So of course, now I'm going after lunch and after Portland, I must say, I got a lot of ideas. I've actually heard a bit about what Portland was doing before, but hearing it a second time really helped instill how exciting that is, and pretty radical set of moves. And so I really I give them a lot of credit for taking that on. So what? I'm going to talk more.
Paul,
what?
Project a little more.
I mean, my big mouth isn't loud enough yet? Okay. All right, use my outside voice. So, okay, I'm just going to get started. I mean, yeah. So this is just a quick history of us. First of all, Thurston County is a county of about 250,000 folks. About half of them, or maybe certainly a little more, live in the urban area of 3 cities. Lacey, Tumwater, and Olympia. And that's kind of our picture. I think this is kind of interesting, and we're all coming from United Ways, but I don't know how it compares to your guys' history, but we go back to 1936, that's as far as we can find on paper. Community Chest, then changed to United Good Neighbors in the late 50s, and then became United Way in 72. We did the kind of the partner agency thing with that kind of area of focus. But my predecessor, Pam Toll, along with the board, really grabbed onto the community impact model fairly early for a small to mid-sized United Way. We're a $1.5 million a year operation, so we're not very big. I wish we were a lot bigger. And we're working on that. So we started phasing out partner agencies in 2004, started competitive funding. These are the focus areas. We kind of narrowed it down a little. I actually was on the board in the late 2000s before assuming the job in 2010. So it was part of the process of focusing further and coming up with some initial measures and indicators that we use. So when I came on board, we started a 2-year funding cycle. Again, the traditional process. We had teams, impact volunteer teams reviewing proposals. It was competitive. We fund programs, not agencies. Interesting how Greater Portland's switching that one out. But when I came on board, I also asked our community impact person at the time to do a matrix of the different local funding organizations, local government, the Community Foundation, us, and CDBG, and what agencies it funded. And I was astounded how much there was a commonality. And that got me thinking, we're doing a bunch of small grants processes, not very efficient, and certainly not focused. And so I started talking with some of the local community leaders. I had a commissioner that's still on my board, Kathy Wolf, who was very interested in it. So we just started that conversation. At the same time, this collective impact concept came out, and people got excited about it on my board. And one thing being about kind of an Olympia-centric organization, we have a lot of policy wonk types, thoughtful people in public policy. So our board they were pretty progressive at thinking about and embracing the collective impact model. So our strategic planning work that we did in 2012 really just grabbed onto that, and the kind of things we said we were going to do grabbed onto that. At the same time, a Thurston Thrives process, which I'll get into later, developed too, and we were a big part of that, both board members and myself. So, okay, so I don't think you need to see this, but I threw this in there just in case no one else mentioned it. We've all seen this. I really buy this. I think it's really a great framing. So these were our key strategies that were from our strategic plan. These are just kind of nice sounding words, but you can see the emphasis and the relationship to collective impact is strongly in there. So again, I feel like we really were ready to kind of walk the talk on that. Here's some of our analysis. So looking at the funding, so what happened with this funding analysis, we started thinking about what we were doing now. This was from a slide from like 3 years ago that we showed to our Community Investment Committee. And, you know, we're about, you know, isolated impact, working on, you know, kind of individual capacity building, et cetera, and what it could be if we work together. Just interrupt me if you have any questions. Some of this stuff is probably not new. So what happened in 2013 is we started developing what we call a community investment partnership. And that's where our 3 local cities and county had a long-term health and human services funding collaborative. They had for like 17 years. And they were considered, so that was a history they had. And so they, you know, this kind of talking about, so I brought forth the notion, well, wouldn't it be great if we worked together with United Way? And actually Jim's a local city council member in Olympia, so he was in on that. So it was great to have him as a co-conspirator, I'll say, although I guess at the time you weren't hired for this job.
Before I worked for United Way.
Yeah. But anyway, so we started talking about it. And of course, government being what it is, they took a whole year to like look at their processes and and they also had to look at all the different funding streams and which other ones they could bring together. Didn't end up leading to a lot, except they did kind of make their system more efficient. They used to have like 4 different contracts for every funded agency. They got money through this central process because there's 4 government agencies. They did some efficiency stuff they got clear on. And they also developed a countywide CDBG program, so that was a big deal. But we started meeting, and we developed our first RFP round in last year. So these are the kind of the goals and the principles that we wanted to do: amplify our impact and focus our results around common goals. So we agreed on some common goals and objectives. Create incentives for service coordination. We increased efficiency. It was definitely an efficiency increase. I mean, that's not enough to do this per se, but it sure was. It sure made sense from both sides, the funder and the fundee. And we could, you know, common performance reporting and continuous improvement and shared oversight and review process. So we kind of took the local government folks. I don't say this out loud to them too much, but we largely modeled it after our existing United Way process. So involving, you know, community, involving a community leader, community groups, community volunteers, 4 teams around these 3 goal areas to kind of read, rate, and make recommendations to a community investment partnership, which was made up of 4 United Way folks, myself and 3 board members, and 4 local government folks. And actually, as it turned out, it was 4 elected officials, which you know, was at times challenging, but it was, you know, that's how it was. So that's the team, that's the partnership that oversees this. Here's, I kind of repeated some of this, that's kind of what I just said. The steering committee, the 4 United Way and 4 local government folks make the final decision. But we did, and the United Way, our members really pushed to ensure that we didn't mess around with the recommendations. So we took these 3 sets of recommendations, we had to meld them together, kind of decide where the cut line was. But we pretty much took the hard work that the review teams had done, because they had done interviews and meeting rating and selection interviews, et cetera, and we didn't want to mess with that. So that took some politicking and some pushing by us on our side to not touch that. But in the end, the local government folks went along. Here's the challenge. This is kind of, I think this is the real learning about it. So that it took some time to build some trust, and there was definitely when I started this process, I actually thought we were pretty on par with a similar amount of funding, $400,000 to $500,000 each. But as it turned out, with their tax issues during the downturn, they were only putting up about $200,000 into the pot. So we made the decision to continue as an equal partnership, even though the amount that we each put in was not equal. So really, United Way is the majority, you know, funder through this joint process. And we did it. I feel like we had to do it just to have that equal partnership. In other words, it couldn't be a majority-minority thing. And also the idea that we can work, builds that trust and working relationship so we can kind of expand it. So definitely part of the vision is to add some more funding into this pot. So we had to take some heat. It was too much like the United Way process. I was at a number of public meetings when people talked about the United Way funding they had just gotten when they really meant the community investment process. And I know the local government folks didn't love that. But again, we did this with the eye and the focus on the collective impact model. And that was the kind of the goal of this, is saying, hey, if funders can't walk the talk and work together and collaborate, what hope do we have for other nonprofits that we always want to collaborate? And that was kind of part of my message. I've been around the block enough to see how funders and the private foundations are often worse. They get excited about their big initiative and how they're going to do it, and then they do that for 3 years, and then they then they change it. And this is about trying to be more focused and holistic around a set of goals for the community and how we enact them. And there's a lot of work to be done, and I'll talk about that. Certainly the agencies, the funded agencies, the partner agencies, they had some challenges with it as well. They had some mistrust, they didn't like some of the process. We ended up using a common tri-party contract, which I thought was innovative, and but we decided to run it because of the government ease, the necessity of the county. The county represents the three cities as the administrator. We use the government contract, so some people didn't like some of the language of that, and they weren't used to having to have that with United Way. But again, in the end, they ended up handling that. We also, here's an interesting thing, we made the decision, instead of sending out separate checks, we actually run, the county ends up administering it, and the check comes from the county, with a letter that says the partnership. So that's another step we took that made me nervous, made me cringe a little, but ultimately it's just the person getting the check and putting it in the bank account that would notice that, I assume. So, but that's one of the things we had to do to have that kind of part of the partnership. We didn't have to do it that way, but we decided to do that. It was an efficiency for us as well, obviously. Let me just see what's next.
Can I just talk about the government funding source for a second?
Yeah.
So I just want to, the local government source, it had sort of been, hit or miss over that 17-year period prior, based on budget, where you are at the end of the year, this is what we're going to contribute. And when we negotiated this, we got all 4 jurisdictions to commit to 0.5% of their sales tax. So it's a fixed amount that as the economy rebounds, hopefully we'll be able to see that money come back, but also think about adding a higher percentage hopefully in the future as well. I just wanted to add that little nuance.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm going to be pushing for the next year. And I said that to them, is I want to have this be a much more even-steven investment, and that really needs to happen. The other thing, what we've talked about trying to do, and kind of again looking at what Portland did, is we worked this year to focus our objectives more, and that is much easier said than done. And I'm going to talk for a minute about the Thirst and Thrives process that we use as the basis for the goals and objectives for our funding. But it still is across the board, and I'd really like to have us be much more narrowly focused. And I know that the politics are tough for United Ways to do that, and they certainly are for local government folks as well. But I think that's the path we're on. Jody?
So having come from a system that had that, I know you looked at what we were doing when you first started doing this, and so we had three local government funds that we were administering grants for. They each had their own priorities, and I never could get them to focus. But
did you ever do a single RFP?
Single RFP.
No.
And the other issue that we ran into is, depending on who's elected, you might be out of favor. And we have a real anti-United Way, anti-tax. So one part of that money is now being administered by the city council. They've kept it, which is good. It's still human service, but it's really prone to what their favorite charity is, which is you have to stay in constant communication with the electeds. so I would advise that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. To the local government's credit, they held this thing together as a partnership with the three cities in the county for about 18 years. So they had a real history there. It wasn't always so targeted, it was pretty broad-based. And I didn't think their process was so good, but they didn't, I don't know if they were able to, they didn't try to, each city council couldn't just pick who they wanted. I mean, that's the thing, it had some integrity.
Right.
It had some integrity.
Ours did too.
So we kind of
before.
build on that. We're gonna have to hold that. Yeah, you never know what can happen, right? Luckily, in some cases, we don't have any strong mayor system, really. I wouldn't even call it Tumwater that, per se. And so, really, it still is a group process for each of the municipalities. So, and so for me, this is when I look at the moving collective impact ball along in our community. Getting the funders to work together was a first step. And at times it felt like a big step. I've spent a lot of time, kind of working this, but we're there at this level. The other fascinating thing that came along at the same time was Thurston Thrives, and this was a kind of a public health initiative that I know probably in all your communities there's something going on. It's public health planning stuff. But our public health leadership and the Board of Commissioners of the county really took a broad perspective. So they came up with this Thurston Thrives concept. It's about health in the broad way, including economic, housing, social health, etc. So they came up with the whole process. And we, because again, and they really bought into the collective impact model as a way to do that. And so it was very aligned. It was about the same time that we were starting our community investment partnership. And so we kind of hitched our wagon together for that. And this year, which our RFP has just come back in, proposal just came back in last week, we tied it to the strategy maps of targeted Thurston Thrives elements. And I'll just say a little more about Thurston Thrives. It was a big process that involved 300 plus people. There were 9 different teams. It built strategy maps, in these areas. Community youth resilience, community resilience, which is a broad one about kind of community togetherness, economy, education, clinical care, emergency care, food, housing, community design, and environment. So it was a pretty big scope. And if anything, again, taking the collective impact approach, these were teams of community members that came together to kind of bring existing strategies into the mix. It's not like they were making it all up from whole cloth, but it involved a lot of key organizations, public, private, and nonprofit, especially probably public and nonprofit. And they came up with strategy maps. You can go to thurstonthrives.com, I think, or just Google Thurston Thrives. You can find them. They're actually pretty cool. They have goals, objectives, and measures. They have a few targeted measures, as well as a lot of indicators, and then they have some key strategies. And so it's a great basis for doing collective impact. The part that worries me, I'm both excited and it's worrisome, is it's kind of like taking on a lot. It's taking on way a lot. And it's going to be up, and I'm not sure about the reality of that. So I know for our organization, we're going to have to make sure we focus somewhat. Now I would say we're especially focused on the children and youth resilience, the economic, education, food, and housing in our grant-making process. But as an organization, along the lines of where Portland is going, I'd like to see us to do more of that, and as a community, actually. So this gives the example of the model. It just kind of community health model in a broad scope. See if I missed anything off of that. So where Thurston Thrives is going is they have these action teams. Most of them are still meeting. Again, it's a collaborative model for organizations to work together. I'll give you a couple examples of things that actually have happened. I was involved in the code education one. They have generated some great community schools initiatives that we're helping fund. that came out of that. They started a high school for kind of a renewal school for high school dropouts called Gravity. This has spread to our region. So some cool stuff has happened in some of these. I know the housing groups are doing some exciting things. And so it's a great vehicle for bringing folks together. Sustaining it is where we're at now. And United Way is a partner. So we have stepped up. This kind of gives you a set of the long-term look at this. Again, our public health department has driven this up till now. But at some point there was some real pushback about this shouldn't be county-led, and nor could it be. That was the way they saw it as well. So we're creating a coordinating council. We might come up with a sexier name for it, but a council, a private-public partnership council, with a bit of an overall backbone organization for this whole initiative. And that's the plan. United Way has put in dollars, the Chamber of Commerce has put in dollars, we have a local small foundation has put up some dollars, and Thurston County has put up dollars. And so we're just starting that now. It's going to be a council of 19 to 20 some people, and again, very private-public partnership oriented. I know I made a play to be the fiscal agent for it. There was some discomfort because we're a funder, so actually the Chamber Foundation is going to do that, which is fine, and the head of the Chamber's on our board, so we have a good connection there. So that's what's going to happen. We're going to have this council that will be in charge of really pushing out communication about community conditions, about strategies, and also looking to have these different action teams or hubs of activity, looking to see where collaboration can happen and hearing from them, and really hopefully facing outward as a group. It's not a controlling body as much as it is a bit of a leadership body, but with no strong necessarily authority. And it's separate from the funding. So again, my hope is that the community investment partnership continues to grow to help drive the funding for these proposals, or for these strategies. That's how it's going to be set up. I probably said all that. Again, this is still a work in progress. The council is going to have its first meeting next month. We're going to have to do a little storming, norming, and forming, I'm sure. But the hope is that this will be the group that will really push out and keep a spotlight on kind of the community issues and the needs, as well as the progress we're making. So one of the concerns I have, so United Way has pushed this. I think it fits the collective impact model. It scares me a little, honestly, because while we're part of it and we can put our brand in there, it's not like we're leading it, and I worry about, okay, so where's that gonna, is that gonna help drive more resources to us, which is what we need, and what not for us, but for the community, because we're still the main vehicle for private giving. That's one of the concerns I have. Again, so I'm in this kind of interesting tension of, as a smaller United Way, wanting to make this happen for my community, but also wanting to make sure it builds and strengthens our work and our ability to strengthen the work. So, some of the things we want to do as well is engage our community foundation in it. They've kind of so something I feel like I spend a lot of my time as a leader herding cats, bringing people together and keeping them together. So I really worked hard to get the CEO of the Community Foundation on board. She's going to be on the coordinating council. And I'd love to see their funding come through us as well, through this partnership. The tightening up and targeting the funding will be another thing that we'll have to keep working on. And then using the Thirst and Thrive process to kind of coordinate and drive the change. There's my story.
Go ahead. Just go.
Yeah.
So, the challenge going forward, and Paul alluded to this, is, okay, now we've got it set up, and the original vision was, in our county, how do we have an intergovernmental agency that serves human services? Like, we have a Clean Water Alliance that does our sewage for all 3 jurisdictions. We have a vision of having that for health and human services. And so, can we get the county to think about putting their federal housing and homelessness dollars into the same pot? So it's going towards the same goal. But the reality is, when I was elected for city council, I started asking questions. For umpteen years, we've been funding how much? And what have we done with that money? Oh, well, we gave it to these people, and these people, and they fed this many people and this many houses. But what did we do with them? What did we change? Nothing. We don't know. We weren't tracking that. And so that's the challenge. I ask you to go back and start that conversation with your elected officials. If you're funding human services, what's the outcome? What's the goal? Where are you putting that money that's helping me achieve my mission? And that's where the partnership will start to evolve. That's just a couple of additional thoughts.
Does anybody else, other communities have had experience with coordinating and commingling with public dollars? You want to share that? Well, you said yours. You're Jackson County?
Right.
And what's your experience been?
We started a joint application and priority process in 1998.
Wow.
So we've been doing it a really long time. I'm not sure I know sort of lessons learned at this point. We would never undo it. And it's not ever about elected officials. Because it was
Is that your full
only
amount?
wonky in a minute.
Your full amount of money? Your full amount of money, or do they hand the money
All
to
the
you?
human services dollars are, we each have our priorities. Our big lesson has always been in all of our work, what can we do and what can we not do? So we honor that that's true for everybody. There are things they can't do. And so we use the city of Ashland, city of Medford, and Jackson County, and United Way. And we use a common application. We have common priorities to a certain degree. And we do all of our joint meetings together, and we don't use government contracts.
Right.
We're not.
You mean you do independent contracts? So common funding process and then separate, yeah.
Right.
So Paul, I was going to mention the homeless task force because that's so successful. So we had a long-term partnership of shelter providers, which was way broader than shelter providers, but it was domestic violence and the service providers, people who serve those individuals, Salvation Army, all kinds of folks, probably about 30 to 50 people that met monthly. And when the state of Washington said that every state and the county has to have a homeless plan, we already had this strong partnership in place. So we developed a 10-year plan. We're now in year 8, and we've reduced homelessness by 80%. And so
Only county with success.
and you know, we are a partner. We're not a backbone, and we really don't contribute much funding other than to some of the agencies. But it does use public dollars with some very measurable outcomes, and it's a great project because it's easy to measure. I mean, it really is easy to measure, and there's some great data on what are best practices, so.
Yes, in Snohomish County, a collective impact model that we're working with is actually was started by the local hospital and health district and health insurance in our area. And they're called the Snohomish County Health Leadership Coalition. And they have a variety of organizations come together. And we're playing the role of being the ones that understand collective impact in a sense. I oversee their strategic committee. And through that, they have, in the two years they've been up and running, done some demonstration projects of working together. They got all the school districts and the Ys to work on a project of increasing youth activity. And 7,000 fifth graders all got these little scored bands to measure their activity and having online kinds of stuff with it. And so through that, and that demonstration, we've been able now to get funding from Boeing and many other kind of groups there, so we have some funds in place. And we've put together a strategic plan for the next couple of years. And one of the things we're trying to do, and I think this is one of the core pieces of a collective impact model, which is this reinforcing of mutual activities, in the sense that you get a lot of people rowing in the same direction and towards a common goal. And so we are now recruiting what we're calling a portfolio of initiatives and finding out who else is doing stuff in our community that's either around youth activity or youth nutrition. that can sign on to the same group of metrics and be rowing in the same direction so that we can see what kind of change we can produce in those areas within the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, I think that's really key. You know, these different hubs that I showed there, you know, the most successful ones are ones that have somebody playing that coordinator, quote, backbone role and are really driving it forward and keeping track. And then the idea of the coordinating council will be kind of overall looking at that and supporting it. But some of these other ones are not that engaged, don't have that impact. And maybe that's just the way it is, but in certain key ones, we're gonna have to find that support, and that kind of costs money to do that, but that's the only way to be successful in moving along and having a bunch of disparate organizations work together, so.
Well, you had asked for other examples, and like Deanne down in Medford, we've been the contract service provider for our largest city's social service fund since like 1992. We use our process with their priorities and their funding, and it's council policy, council driven. We've got a very open relationship with the Human Service Committee. They're very inquisitive with us. What changes would you recommend? How would you improve the process? And so it's really been, hey, you give us feedback. What kind of information would you like? Here's what we are doing with our process. This is why we're doing this. As we launched our Vision Council work a couple of years ago, we were really upfront with them. We think at some point we'll have recommendations for you. We'll keep you posted and tell you what we can when we learn it. And as our Vision Council work concluded this last year, we broke our funding model and split it apart into two pieces, one around basic needs and interventions, and then the second around an RFP process that will launch later around prevention. But in doing so, we looked at the council priority, which was really basic needs, emergency and transitional services. And so our Community Impact Committee voted to adopt council's definition. And we've had a joint application for 4 years now, one review committee, one funding output on the back end, one review, one evaluation, one set of reports. And so far, it seems to be working really well.
That's great.
We'll use that to launch a funders forum process. We'll convene in about another month.
Good. Other things, questions, or things to share?
And we also have about, how many Rotary clubs do we have? 6, 8 in the county?
8 or 9.
And they're all now talking about whether they could jointly contribute to the community investment partnership rather than having their own grant process. Thinking about service clubs getting involved in this, like Paul mentioned, the community foundation.
Yeah, although I would say that that's more still in the idea stage.
It's definitely
the
not.
reality stage. The community foundation, I'm more hopeful about. Go ahead.
So a few of us know a little bit about your ACES work, that partnership that you've been working.
The ACES work?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So how do you kind of determine, like, for these different areas, is there an organization that's going to take the lead on one specific focus area, or who's going to
Well,
staff this?
In this case, that each of these hubs figured that out. Now some, and there were two appointed chair or co-chairs for each of these that was done fairly thoughtfully at times, not always. And like the Community Youth Resilience one, that's an example. And these weren't all, like I said, some of these came out, took existing collaboratives and brought them in. So the group working on ACES, there was a Thurston Council on Children and Youth. They existed, they were still trying to figure it. This gave them a better, stronger focus, I would say. But they had some natural leaders. We have there's a woman, Liz Davis, I don't know if you've run into her, but she's with the Northwest Venture Philanthropy Group. And it's a small foundation based in Olympia. And she's basically taken that one and become the backbone coordinator for it. And that's real, and they've moved forward because of that. Before that, it was much more of a monthly meeting of folks to share and do some talk collaboration, but limited, very, very limited staffing support. So now they have a lot more going on with that. So that's an example of somewhere. And I could see us, sometimes I think, boy, I'd just like to put our scarce dollars into just that. And hearing from Portland made me think about that again. So, but that's an example. And there's been active coordination with the Children and Youth Resiliency team and the education team about working together, because really there's there's a lot of shared kind of goal areas amongst them. So that's another thing that's happening. Other questions or comments? I even spent less time than you had me budgeted for it, right?
Paul, did you guys end up creating the food coalition because of a way you did the grant process a year prior? How you narrowed it down to one application?
I wouldn't say that, because that was what Jim's referring to is a few years prior, when we were still just doing United Way funding. We asked we were funding, when I came on board, we were funding 5 different food banks throughout the county, and we, after talking with them and conferring, we decided to ask them to put a single proposal in, especially because, food banks, it's a very basic operation of collection, distribution, et cetera. And so they've been doing that ever since. So that was one that they built on, but that food piece has got a lot more than that, the different organizations involved. And it's, the other area of tension about this is Thurston Thrives is about community health broadly. And so I know the head of our public health says, it's not just about low income. And so, and yet, of course, our funding and most of the public funding as well is about helping low income. And so there's a little bit of tension there. But I would say when you look at the strategy maps for each of these areas, you'll see most of the strategies are about helping the vulnerable and lower income.
And do check the strategy maps out, because they do boil it down to one indicator in each area. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, the strategy maps are a very good model.
Yeah. I just had a question in regard to Thurston Thrives and your United Way. What role are you playing? What is the value add of what you're doing in Thurston Thrives and in each of these other areas that fall under that? What's your involvement?
The involvement, at the staff level, we were involved in as a member or leader of about 3 of those.
Okay.
Board members, they put a steering committee together, and like 4 or 5 of the United Way board members were on that. Not just because they were United Way board members, but because they were community leaders, but also because they were United Way board members. So a lot of natural integration that way, which was good to bring us together. And so I would say that's the main thing. Again, this is, at some point I thought, well, God, we could be the backbone for this. But that's where some of the tension comes in about us being the leader as a funder, and so it didn't come to play, which I think is fine, because we're going to be a partner in it. But that goes back to my original concern of, okay, this isn't our parade per se, but we're part of it, and that's the collective impact model.
Yeah.
So.
And so with that, you had said that these different groups don't really have authority, but they're kind of like, are they more initiative focused and then trying to draw funds in for specific initiatives? And then is anything being measured to really see what's happening?
Well, it's definitely being measured. There's clear measures about the initiative, but it is initiative driven. And yeah, these aren't single organizations. These are collaboratives, kind of in the collective impact model. And I think that's why we have to make sure the funding is aligned to that to particularly drive it. But I'll give most of them I'll give them credit. They came up. The process forced them to come up with objectives and measures as well.
Okay.
So, but it could. Some of these will not move forward like others. It's just, I don't think we have the bandwidth to pull them all together. It's going to take a lot of entrepreneurial action by the folks involved in it, which has been the main driver. But the good thing is people are generally on board with the project and how it can work, with the value of it.
So this is clearly systemic, long-range work. United Way at the table as part of the leadership in thinking. How do you talk to donors about Thurston Thrives?
Yeah, I haven't quite figured that out. I say we're part of it. We've embraced it. But the tricky thing is we still end up having to make the same kind of pitches about the services we're funding, because this isn't very sexy and this isn't a hard thing. And that's one of the challenges of playing this arena. I think it's the right way to organize, and those of us that are in the thinking about systems know that, but it still isn't the best way to sell to funders and or to donors. And I think that's one of the tensions that we have to find a way to say it. I think, I'll tell you, when I talk to CEO types, though, they get it. And they particularly get it when I talk about some key initiatives that drive collaboration, like they love my food bank story. So they're all for that. This is a big picture thing, and so we have to kind of talk, talk about the smart, how smart this is, and what are the key elements. But I still don't, in our big signature, we didn't highlight this at our big signature fundraiser a couple months ago. We told the story of one family that had gotten help from a number of organizations that we support. So, I don't know, does the others have any answers on that one? Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been really working this for years, actually, the question around messaging. And I can't claim that, we're anywhere different than anybody else is, but what I think of is that there are 3 ingredients, really. I always like to say 3 or something, right? That's a messaging point. So 3 ingredients to making the case for a bigger role for United Way. One is, there's a tradition that we've been involved in, so for many, many years, since 1955, we've raised and invested over $70 million in our community, and helped tons and tons of people along the way, and that's important work, and we're still doing that. But what's changed in the community? When you look at poverty rates, when you worry about education, when you are concerned about the quality of life, and we're talking about Yakima County, so people really get it when we talk about that. What's changed? And are things getting better or worse? And most people will say it's worse. And you say, well, United Way is aware of that, and we're really worried about it, and so we're doing more. That's what we're trying to do. So don't lose the value, ingredient 1. Don't give up the value that you've already established for the donor. The simple equation of you give us money, we help people, right? But say we're trying to do more, and this is the more, that we need to change how we do the work so that when we help people, they move to self-sufficiency, not just pay their rent. That's where you can get real specific in that. And now let me tell you a story about an agency and a family. So that's, don't lose the value, add the phrase that we need to do more for the community, and here's how we're doing it and what it looks like in a real story. Yeah. That's my thought about that. But I don't claim that that's, a total solution. It's just what we're going with, and it seems to be resonating.
Yeah, it's a good 3.
Always 3.
That's kind of our approach too. We really talk about the data points and all the good stuff in our economy, in our community rather. That is going down, and all the bad stuff is going up. And is that really the picture we want to paint? And when we were talking about 25, we're not quite as bad as it is here. 25% of our families live in poverty, below the federal poverty level. The Chamber of Commerce the director said, when did that become acceptable?
Yeah, and I think that's where we understand the complex social and economic reasons in our country that a lot of the indicators aren't going the right way, and we can't take responsibility for solving all those. But we can take responsibility for bringing the community together to talk about it and maybe get organized to act on it, and we're part of that solution. I think I love the Portland concept of bringing the 30 organizations together, partly as a way to get them thinking about being system change advocates together with United Way as well. We need more of that, as we know as well. And in our community, the advocacy is bifurcated by subsector. So, other thoughts? Good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Paul. So Paul got us right back on time. She's the executive director of the United Way of Jackson County, Oregon. She's going to tell us some stories about what they're up to.
Very good.
Thank you.
So I'll start with, we're a wacky little United Way, and we're really proud of that. And we have a staff of 7. We raised about $1.2 billion, $1.3 million. In my prior life, before being at United Way for 19 years, 19 and a half years, I was an economist for 17 years, which is generally a job you have that is no practical experience to do anything else. And I ended up at United Way, but it's why I ask obscure questions. So our mission is mobilizing, caring to affect change. We connect people who need help with people who can help. Or, as I simply put it, after working there for 7 years, we raise people, money, and stuff. And people first, because it's how we actually create change. We don't do it with the money, we do it with the people. We have 30 board members, 7 employees, and 1,500 volunteers. And that is Michael Rust Jr., and he is our shredder, and he's 5 years old. And he started volunteering with us when he was 4, but now he's in kindergarten, so he's a little busier. But he still comes every week. So what do? We have a project called The Big Idea, which is 100% high school completion for the class of 2020. And it is a very aggressive goal in a community that when we started it 2.5 years ago, our county had 61% high school completion. And we're very excited to say we're all the way up to 68, which is still embarrassing. We brought together our homeless task force, which is also very strong, and lead Project Community Connect. We do Cash Jackson County. For those of you in Portland, you've heard of Cash Oregon. And it's creating asset savings and hope. It's our financial literacy project. We have an emergency assistance fund called Hope Chest. WILL is our Women's Leadership Council, and they'll never change their name because they like being willful, and they are. We do a day of caring. We have a relatively new project called Removing Barriers, and we landed the grant through ODOT and our transportation district to have mobility management be a part of our United Way. And we do program funding still. We fund 57 different programs in our community, but the dollars used are not restricted in any way, but they are outcome driven. We adopted a belief in 2008, and every single thing we do, we run through our belief. And it is deeply embedded in who we are. And you'll read it later because it's long. We're focused on education, income, health, and transportation. In 2009, we did community conversations in all of the small and larger communities and neighborhoods in our county. And what we learned was that transportation will keep you in poverty, keep you uneducated, keep you without a job. So we added transportation. So we don't have a traditional organization chart at all. We have an operating model that we also adopted in 2008. And depending on what you're doing, you could interact with any of us at any time. So our values and culture are in the center, and the outermost circle is our community. And then you can see we have 4 broad areas around community building, resource development, organizational structure, raising awareness. And ultimately, the 3rd circle out is our leadership strategy. And so it's about change, results, engagement, and leadership. How do we do it? In 2001, we started talking about creating a learning community in our community. We went to Peter Senge at MIT, and Peter wrote the books, Learning Organizations, Learning Schools That Learn. And we said, do you think a community can learn together? We became the first of now over 8,000 learning communities around the world. Sorry, asthma, I should not have walked outside. We brought together in 2004, Peter, along with other people from MIT, and 120 leaders in our community around education, faith, government, nonprofits, and social services to learn the 5 skills that learning organizations use to apply them to community. We did not allow our learning community to do a project because we knew that once they finished, they would think they were done. So it was evil and intended. Because they're like, couldn't we just build a playground together like this? You're like, no, you can't. You actually have to apply these skills all the time from here on out. My favorite quote about collective impact comes from Norm Smith, who was the CEO of the Ford Family Foundation for many years. And when he introduced me to the FSG folks, he said, "Oh, United Way of Jackson County's been doing that for years." So that was fun. And you'll see a very snotty language slide coming up the bottom, which my staff laughed at. Thank you for that. So here's sort of the ties to collective impact. We're already collective impact exhausted in our community because we have the Early Learning Hub, we have SOARS, the Southern Oregon Regional Success Cradle to Career thing, we have the CCOs, we have the Healthcare Coalition of Southern Oregon, we have the United Way work, we have a funders forum that we started, I think about 20 years ago, maybe 18, and they all say they're doing it. Where we get confused, I believe, in this work, is we think we're doing something when we're talking about process. And so I've said I'm never coming to another process meeting as long as I have this job. And people just kind of go, okay. But it's true, I won't go. And because systems change is very active. It's real work. So what do? We convene interested parties that don't look like traditional people, or traditional agencies or groups, on any particular subject, whatever may emerge in our community or presence itself. We have always selected strategic pillars for our learning organization, learning community work. And so we select these strategic pillars, which are often systems change, public awareness, prevention, treatment, depending on what you're working on. We select tactics, measures, we hold each other accountable, and the most important thing is we show up. There's the Emmy. Sorry, you're not allowed to put it on a plane, because it has those sharp, pointy things. So I didn't try at the airport this morning. But some of our victories, we started a meth task force in 2004. We were among the first meth task forces in the country. We partnered with the Montana Meth Project, the Oklahoma Meth Project, the Arizona Meth Project. We helped launch the Meth Project in Douglas County and in a lot of other communities. There is a belief that meth was actually invented in Southern Oregon, sadly. But our victories over those last many years, we've increased treatment dramatically. We've had less success with education prevention in the schools, but we've had phenomenal success with larger public education. And our efforts around that went on to win the Service to America Award from the National Association of Broadcasters. The Drug Endangered Child Protocol, which is law in Oregon, grew out of our county and our meth task force, which means you have to protect children when you go and make those arrests. We have cold medicine not only behind the counter, but actually by prescription only in Oregon if you have pseudoephedrine in it. And our meth task force is credited with getting that through the legislature. Our CAN, which is the Child Abuse Network, we brought together 40 different organizations, faith communities, government, adult survivors, people all across the spectrum to say, what can we do about changing child abuse in our community? And it led to a project called Don't Turn Away. Because none of us want to read those stories. None of us want necessarily to talk about those stories. And we have dramatically changed public discourse in our community. And I think now I believe it's just about everyone, because everyone who comes into my office discloses their own abuse. I feel fortunate to be removed from that. The last one is the newest. It's the Removing Barriers Project. We have staff who focuses on the transportation issues in our community. We have a transportation district that doesn't fit our county geographic boundaries. It's kind of sketchy and weird. And so we're doing all kinds of multimodal transportation. We're about to contract with Zagster, a national company that does bikes, and they're in bike lockers. The cities have all said, yes, we want them in our community. There's an app. You text, you get the combination to get the bike out, you ride it to the bus stop or to the next place, and you give the bike back. They have a 1% loss rate. Wow. So it's pretty astounding. And they insure the bikes and they repair the bikes, so we're not doing any of that. The biggest victory we had was, we live in a community where after 6 o'clock at night, if you're in a wheelchair or board or bed bound, we had no transportation if you were on the Oregon Health Plan. None. So what our hospitals would do, but not tell anyone, was they would admit you for another night. They would release you medically and admit you socially, because we all check into the hospital socially. And we managed to say to transportation providers and to healthcare people, how about you guys partner and take people home? Because if they discharge you at 2, you probably are leaving around 6. And now people can have a ride home after 6 or on Fridays and the weekend. If you got released on Friday after 6 o'clock, you were there till Monday. So this is my whole thing about all of this language. Language speaks us, we don't speak it. There were learning organizations, learning communities, then there was community building, then there was community impact, now there's this collective impact, and my own personal favorite is the 4 C's. When I went to the Stanford Leadership Program for Nonprofits in 2000, they talked about competitive advantage. And it's so cool to see that they're now talking about collaborative advantage. Because I believe that's the highest working order. It's way above competitive. So I want to see us talk about it like that. So our own strategies at our United Way are about the big idea, 100% high school completion. Income are around increasing financial stability with cash and with Hope Chest, our emergency fund. Our health strategies are around CAN, our child abuse network, and also around healthy behaviors, because we know that volunteering helps people to live 5 to 7 years longer. Transportation, you can see. So why do we do it? 23% of our kids live in poverty every day. I did learn that I'm going to add that together with how many kids are in low income, and I'm going to be depressed, but I'll share it when I get home. Our unemployment rate, excuse me, is higher than the state of Oregon and the US. 32% of our kids don't graduate from high school, and our districts have started bragging about their 5- and 6-year high school completion rates. And I think that is completely twisted. Oregon ranks 49th in the US in high school graduation. We really rank 50th because Idaho didn't turn their data in on time. And everybody knows Idaho's going to fall in the middle of the pack, so I'm just telling the truth here. We rank 48th in hungry families. In our county, 1 in 4 of our families struggles with addiction, not just use, but addiction. 1 in 4 of our kids are sexually abused by the age of 18. And 12% of our school children qualify for McKinney-Vento, which means they're homeless. So this slide is like from the early 2000s from United Way Worldwide. And we keep it as always sort of our, are we doing the right thing? Lessons learned. This is my favorite picture. It's a little girl playing whack-a-mole. Because we have to stop playing that. We can take our focus and focus on this for now or that for now or the next thing. But that's all we're doing, is playing whack-a-mole. For us, we try to end with the beginning in mind. It's really easy to begin with the end in mind. We want to flip the conversation. The next 2 are my favorite explanations for why we are successful at what we do. When I started, I was the first new staff in 25 years at our United Way. And there was no one to train me. So I didn't know what I did. So that it turned out to work okay. We have a joke now. We have this very funny employee orientation manual that the whole team wrote. It has everyone's nicknames in it. It's silly. My own personal recipe for success is that we have to be bold and we have to be naive. I don't know the right quotients to have that recipe work, but I think those are the parts that we have to have. The board and the staff have to be all in. And the staff has to be all in, because some staff are not all in. We adopted values, but not till 2008. But they really make our decision-making easier. And it matters just that we do something. Because we can sit around in a room and still act like that old-fashioned United Way that pats people on the head and gives them money, or we can actually do something. The next 6 slides are not really, they're like Paul's and Zeke's this morning. You're not really supposed to read them, but you'll see them later. But you can look over the last 19 years that I've been there and kind of get a sense of the transformation. You can see that we started endorsing legislation very early on in 2000s. We continue to do it, and only now, next Monday at 3:30, are we having our first meeting about setting a framework for what public policy we're willing to get involved in. Before we have just done it. And now they're like, we could probably use a framework of some kind. You're like, you've been doing it for 10 years, but okay. So we're gonna do that, because that's the way we do things. We operate in free space. We realized about 10 years ago that if we didn't own a building or rent a building, we could invest our dollars a lot better. So we go to local corporations until we outgrow their space and say, you must have an empty building for us. And amazingly enough, they do. So right now we're in an American West Bank branch building that we all fit in, and it costs $1 a year on a 5-year lease. Wow. So our board operates on a consent agenda. We don't ever talk about meeting minutes or routine resolutions or anything like that. It's all in the top half of our meetings, probably 15 minutes. The rest of our meetings are education or dialogue about what's going on, what's up for you, what are you noticing. We're pretty active on social media, because some people saw the Emmy on social media. You said you saw it. It really does exist. It's weird. And then sometimes we're asked to take positions, and we realized in 2012, taking no position was as important as taking a position. So Medford was trying to build a public swimming pool, but it only affected Medford. And we decided we weren't going to get involved in local tax measures that benefited only a small portion of the people we serve. We've had agency squabbles where we intervene and try to be the community convener, advocate, and facilitator to create change. And so we have a lot of those examples. Last September, Weed, California had a terrible fire. And it started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And by 4:30, 40% of the town's housing was gone. Wow. We are closer to Weed than the United Way that serves it. And I knew we had to do something. So at 6:30 the next morning, I was just texting the board president, a communications expert on our board, and said, we're opening an account. 100% of the money is going to go there to create long-term change. And we raised very rapidly over the next, ultimately 3 months, but really in the next 2 weeks, the largest single pool of funds that are going to help Weed. And so we've met with the United Way of Northern California, which is in Reading, and we're just about ready to turn that money over. But it was just the right thing to do. And their president called me and said, who are you? Why are you doing this? And I said, you know, it would have been really a good idea to call you first, but my community is closer to Weed. And they go to Mount Shasta, and that's where they ski, and that's where they hang out, and they wanted to do something. And so she was stunned but thrilled, because we'll be turning over $150,000. And our the right thing to do. So now this year, some of our activities are around this removing barriers work. I've become completely intrigued with the micro-housing thing. I am sick of people talking about a tent city, and I think, why not be a little more dignified and look at the micro-houses? I'd like to live in one, personally. So my final thoughts. Issues really can be chronic or episodic, and we have to deal with that in community all the time. Issues can be emerged or presenced in community. They can just come up. Our job isn't only to be reactive or proactive, It's to allow the community to breathe those issues up. We always ask ourselves 5 whys. We're still learning, and we admit it. Our high school completion project that ends in 2020, people say, what are you going to do in 2021? And I say, I don't know, because we don't know. We made no plan, we're just doing it. The graphic there is Coro Imparo, for those of you who speak Italian. Michelangelo said, I am still learning at 87. That's it, I'm done. That's us. Are there any questions?
Dan, what are the 5 whys?
Just why?
Why?
Yeah, why? You know, I mean, because we can ask ourselves once and think we know the answer. We try not to play inside baseball very much. Yes.
You know, I would challenge you on your comment about the 5th year and 6th year graduation rates, because I heard a couple of principals talking about, and this goes into that why, what student experience is where they have to work to support their family, and not that that's right, but that we should celebrate students who graduate in the 5th year and the 6th year as opposed to a GED. Especially.
I think it would be awesome if they got GEDs and got on with their lives, because high school isn't for everyone. And I love being challenged, so challenge me. I do, I happen to really like it. And I say to everyone who comes to work for us, if you're not willing to go toe to toe with me, you don't really probably want to work here. So, but for us, that just feels so defeatist to me. To say, woohoo, you know, 10% more graduate in 6 years. I don't care.
What's the return on investment?
Yeah, if we're going to reduce our standards, why do we care about high school completion? While I have said graduation, I don't mean that, I mean completion. Because our big idea is for every single child. I now have 1,081 new best friends who are in 7th grade today. And they know they're a part of something special. We were profiled on the Immense Possibilities public television show. And one of our 7th graders was with me. And he was so cute because the moderator said, Joey, does this affect you in any way? And he said, I'm not half the boy I used to be. They're like, where is that stuff coming from? You know. But what we're up against, we just have to be honest, and we just have to show up. Because we're up against a lot of things and a lot of people. And I thought what Paul shared was really great, because there is a balance between being a leader and the leader. And if we know when to show up just to be a part of a team, we're going to have a lot more success. So I thought that was really courageous and great. And we don't ever talk about the 30,000 foot level, because everyone in here probably has been at 30,000 feet. And quite frankly, what can you see on the ground? Nothing. But the Lakota believe that if you see at the 2,000 foot level, you have the eagle's eye view, which means you can see the curvature of the earth and the mountains. So we try to talk about 2,000 foot. Someone else challenged me. It's my favorite part. No other questions?
Other questions?
Perfect. There you go.
Well, thank you, Deanna. So we're now ahead of schedule. So let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back at 20 till, and the chances are pretty good that you'll get to go home early. Is that a good outcome of a day like this?
Yeah, right, I'll totally be on time.
Okay, perfect. So be back at 20 till.
What's that?
And then I'm also on Monday or Tuesday, I'm going to send you a 3 or 4 question Survey Monkey. Okay, just to kind of ask you about your day, really easy. When I hit 25% return, 15 people, then I'll send you the PowerPoints. I just saw that right now. I was like, is that going to work? I think it's Should I have said 50 or is 25? Yeah, we'll go with 25 and see how that works, okay?
Or you just call your peers.
So with that, I'm really honored to introduce, and I hope I don't butcher your name, Elena Fracchia.
Yes.
And she's the Director of Financial Stability and Community Impact at the United Way of Lane County in Eugene, Springfield, Oregon.
Thank you very much. All right, so one edit, not all of community impact, but community investments.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. We have a lot of people doing community impact at our United Way. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk a little bit about specifically our financial stability partnership. We have in our United Way in Lane County, we do have an education coalition, a health coalition, and an income coalition. And so to tell you a little bit about Lane County, for those of you that don't really know where we are, because many people know Eugene Springfield area. We've got the University of Oregon, most people maybe have driven through, if not stopped and been there, but Lane County itself actually extends out to the coast, so Florence is part of our county, as well as into the Cascades, looking at Mackenzie Bridge, Oak Ridge, down to Cottage Grove, and up to North Springfield. Our county is roughly the size of the state of Connecticut. So just to give you some context of what we're working with and how we're doing our work, it's pretty complicated. We've got folks in very small towns heading out to the coast to a pretty robust regional metro area that's got a major university with lots of resources. Trying to span our work and create work that can reach out to all of those households is really important and really challenging. So the other piece that's interesting about our work, and I think applies to all of us, is what's happening in the Pacific Northwest. And I read an article recently that I thought was really interesting. Last year, 2014, almost all interstate moves, so people moving from one state to another, the majority of them were moving to the state of Oregon. We beat out Washington, D.C. for the first time in many years. And across the whole Pacific Northwest, there's this conversation. People look at us and they say, wow, what a great place to live. People are active, you got a great lifestyle, it's beautiful, and yet there's this reality that we face that it's actually really difficult to live here. Incomes are low compared to housing prices. We talked a little bit and heard about poverty this morning, and the fact that income doesn't tell us anything about poverty. But what we have to understand for people as they try to make ends meet, as they try to get to the end of the month, is what makes up those decisions. What are all of those levers that they're working on to be financially stable? And that's the work that we're focused on. The coalition that I work with, we've spent a lot of time out in the community talking with folks, asking them what it means to be financially stable. What kind of community do they want to live in? How do we understand and create that community? Has anyone done the Harwood training? All right, we got one. Oh yeah, we were at the same training 2 years ago. One of the things that we learned at Harwood is the model where we bring experts into the room and we say, okay, tell us exactly what's happening and how to fix it, and what do you think and what are the best practices. It's really challenging when you never go out and ask people in your community what's actually challenging for them. So we create these programs, we come into communities, we invest in programs thinking that they're the best use of our resources, and yet the people in our community are saying, no, I just want safety. I want to feel secure. I want to be financially independent. I want to be on my own. So for us, as we take this vision and think about how are we going to apply it, we've also come up with what we think is a little bit more specific of a goal, but it helps direct our work. And this is that Lane County individuals and families will have the knowledge, tools, and resources necessary to get to the end of the month with money left over. And this last piece, getting to the end of the month, is a huge piece. Because when we ask people, what does it mean to be financially stable? Nobody told us anything about an income level. Nobody told us about the size of the house they were going to own, or whether they were renting, whether they were living in a mobile home park. Nobody said anything about how much their childcare costs or transportation. When we asked specifically, what does it mean to be financially stable? Getting to the end of the month with money left over. And that was managers at major credit unions, to people living in homeless shelters. It didn't matter who we talked to, that's what they told us. So that's what we're focusing on. But specifically, we're focusing on these three pieces: knowledge, tools, and resources. Those three together are what we believe will actually make a difference in the lives of families. So it's not just taking a class, but it's taking a class and receiving a tool. It's receiving the resources to apply that tool. Understanding how those three things work together for any individual, any family that is coming through the programs that we're working with. To give you a sense of the type of work that we're doing, just a context in case any of you are also working on these projects, we're part of local, state, and national partnerships. Our local partnerships, we do a lot of work with tax credit outreach. We do not actually run the tax sites. AARP Tax Aid runs all of our tax sites, so we work with them on specifically the outreach. We do My Free Taxes. If you don't know about My Free Taxes, check it out. It's awesome. It is the best resource that you can find. It is the easiest thing to promote in your communities because anyone who made less than $60,000 in 2014 household can get their taxes done for free online. If they have access to the internet, they have access to this resource. You can tell them that now. You don't even have to have any marketing. You can tell people that. The other piece of our local work is partnering with our Early Learning Alliance. And we're doing some work around child care affordability, specifically looking at how on earth are families affording child care. We happened to have this meeting where somebody had sort of lobbed that idea out on the table and the whole room erupted. Since then, anytime we mention child care affordability, the whole room erupts. There is apparently, nobody's making any waves in this area. And yet when we look at the cost of university education, so Oregon State education, in-state, I've been corrected, not out-of-state students, I get it, costs a little over $6,000 a year. For infant, toddler childcare, $9,000 a year. Think about how long you spend saving for college for a kid, and think about how many months you spend contemplating childcare for your infant or toddler. People are not planning, and why would they? You maybe have a little bit more than 9 months to plan. And so how do we help those families think about that cost of childcare either before they get pregnant or at the time that they've become pregnant? How are we thinking about that? How are we helping families budget? Our statewide partnerships that we're a part of, Bank on Oregon. For those of you in Oregon, we are part of this statewide partnership. It's an opportunity for you to get your financial educators and your financial institutions on that website. You can contact me if you're interested in participating. And for those of you in Washington, we've modeled our statewide Bank On after you. So the state of Washington learned a lot of lessons from doing individual Bank-Ons and then creating a statewide. We've modeled ours and gone straight to the statewide. There were a couple of folks that were doing individual Bank-Ons, and we immediately went to a statewide version. The Oregon IDA initiative, so thinking about legislative actions that are happening, individual development accounts are one of the best ways that we're seeing people actually change their habits of saving. And there's big money on the table in the session right now. Same thing with retirement savings, which doesn't have an official coalition, but that's another piece of work that we're looking at. How do we help that? Nationally, we are a lead local organization for the Assets and Opportunity Network, and so we work with our statewide representative, neighborhood partnerships again, and working with them on how do we relay information around asset building? How do we help people do that? And finally, the one I'm going to spend all the rest of my time talking about is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Your Money, Your Goals Financial Empowerment Toolkit Training. Got all that? It's a mouthful. This training has been a phenomenal tool in our community and something we're continually learning about. We were part of the pilot year last year to implement this in our community, and we're now in our second round, what we're still calling beta testing because we're still learning from it. But understanding how to create how to get more tools in people's hands. So again, going back to those knowledge, tools, and resources, this is a tool that we're trying to get into the hands of as many caseworkers as we can. So for today, one of the things as we think about financial empowerment and what that is, what that means, and thinking about this toolkit, The easiest way for me to explain what the toolkit is to show you how the training works. So I'm gonna do a mix of training activities, hence the neon pink post-it on your table, and talk about how that gets applied in our community. So a little bit of both what you would get in the training, what it would look like. I will also tell you that I reached out to the CFPB and asked them to provide toolkits for each United Way that is here today, and I have those for you at the end of the session. So they've been a great partner to us. They know that United Ways are uniquely positioned to deliver this training, to utilize your partners that you have, the financial experts that work with you, volunteers, all of those things come together in this training. As we think about collective impact, one of the things with financial stability and the work of our financial stability partnership is that first piece of a common agenda, the whole idea of you want to get everyone in the boat and everyone's rowing in the same direction. Well, oftentimes when I show up in a room and I'm going to talk to you about finances, nobody even wants to get in my boat. They are terrified of what we're doing. They don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Finances? No way. Budgeting? I don't know how to do that. I don't do that. Credit? Absolutely not. Financial products? How would you know how to pick that? I can't even barely pay my mortgage. I don't have a budget. And yet, what we're finding is that if we create opportunities for people to understand that it's okay to teach financial skills without being perfect yourself, that's actually, we can move people forward. Because maybe it doesn't work for you, but it might work for your client. So for us, this is an opportunity to gently encourage people to get into the boat and to get into a boat that they may not otherwise have gotten into. So it's allowing us to reach out much further than our sort of usual suspects, the people that always come to the table, the people who are consistently advocating on behalf of financial stability, our bankers, our credit unions, our financial planners, all of those people, they know this is great. It's everyone else that we have to convince. And so we are slowly but surely with this toolkit inviting more people to learn and to try sharing it with their friends, with their neighbors, specifically with their clients. We largely play a backbone role in that we're providing the training, we're soliciting trainers and getting volunteers to participate, we're coordinating all of the logistics, and yet we want to make sure that this is a community effort. We want as many people involved as possible. We are using national shared measures, so everyone that's using this toolkit is using the same measurements nationally. It's fantastic. It's all created for you. And while I have a copy of the toolkit for you today, it's also available online. So anyone can download it. You can download the training. You can download the Train the Trainer. So you can literally go home tomorrow, spend 4 hours of your Saturday, get trained, and on Monday, you can provide this training to whoever you want. She laughed. I know she's not actually going to go do this training. That's okay, you don't have to. But I'm just trying to let you know, this is available to you right now. You can implement this next week in your United Way with your partners. Find somebody that you can talk to about this training. Now, as I jump into some of the things around the toolkit training, I am required to put the slide. Anytime that I'm talking about the CFPB, all of this training, I'm not actually going to read it to you. Basically, they're not taking credit for any of my amazing tips and tricks that I have to share with you today. So I have to put this in the slide. Did you all see it?
Yep.
Yes? Nod? Okay, great. Moving on. So this is the first activity that we do in the training. Before introductions, before anything else. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to do this. And by the way, it's a competition. So every single one of your tables, you can join that table. It's cool. It's cool. I want you, on your piece of paper with your green pen, the marker, list all the words, phrases, sayings, songs, and other associations you have with the word money. You have 2 minutes. Go.
Dough, box, dough, box, bowling.
Duck it.
Show me the money. What's this? Show me the money phrase. Here's a good one. Good song. Money. What's that? What money? We don't need no money.
Words for association. Huh? We don't need no education. Pink Floyd.
No, it's called, what's the song? There's a song.
Budget.
We don't need no money. We don't need all we need is
Money.
Moolah.
Think of wealth. I think of poverty. You think of moolah? Did you say?
Moolah.
Moolah. You're thinking of all. Moolah.
Pesos. Rubles. Euros.
Yeah, we're right about
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know what, when I think of money, I think of opportunity, so it's together.
Yeah.
Access. Self-sufficiency.
Yeah. I think those are probably more.
New car, new boat.
All right, freeze!
Great
Hands up.
vacation.
Hands up.
What?
One person.
2 minutes.
One person at your table, count up how many words you have. This is like Zeke, I'm in charge of the time. I don't know if it's 2 minutes or not, it's close. How many did you get?
18.
18? Anyone have more than 18? 24?
Wow.
19?
20.
20? I'm hearing 24, is that the biggest one?
I think so.
All right, congratulations.
Did they get money?
All right, so what were some of the things on your paper? Just give us a couple of them.
We do a little Destiny Child, those bills. Pink Floyd's money, all about 50 cents, all about the Benjamins. Dollar bills, cash, bucks, credit, dollars and cents, greenbacks,
Yeah, okay.
investments, retirement, credit unions, banks, assets.
Great. Other folks, a couple other ones?
Opportunities, access, self-sufficiency, in
Uh-huh.
addition to all that.
Yeah.
And then we use some foreign language like dinero, peso, rubles, euros.
What else?
$2, Chuck.
$2 check. An excellent choice.
Budget, savings.
Budget, savings.
Budget cut, repossession.
Yeah. All right, I know I've heard it. Show me the money. Right?
Yep.
I have to tell you, every time I do this activity with a group of folks, I learn new words for money that I've never in my life heard. New associations, and there's constantly new ones coming out because it's part of our world. And yet, when we look at the actual definition of money, any generally accepted medium of exchange, that's what money is. So how in our culture have we gotten to a place where this is the definition of money, and yet what's on your paper is often also the definition of money? What does that mean for our communities? What does that mean for people that we work with?
Experiences.
Their experiences matter. How they think about money, how they experience money is different. What else?
It's all encompassing. Money is like impossible to separate out from any other part of your life also.
Yeah,
That's why it shows up everywhere in life.
yeah, it does. What else?
There's emotion with it.
Yes, there's emotion involved.
Stress was one of the words we had.
What's that?
Stress was one of those words we had.
It's a big one, yeah.
We also had power.
Mm-hmm.
So the relationship with it is either positive or negative or fill in the blank.
Exactly. There's so much that comes with, and the associations with money. And so that's a huge hurdle as we think about talking to people about how do you utilize your money? What decisions are you making? What does that look like in your life? And making sure that we spend a little time just acknowledge what money is to you, your association with it, your history with it, your family's history with money. Some people come to money and it's a huge source of stress, automatically because that's how they've grown up. Other people never really thought about it because they didn't have to. It was never an issue, it was never brought up in their childhood. But now it's an issue for them, and they don't know what to do. Other people have grown up in households where they talk about it all the time. And they've got all these tips and tricks, but they just don't seem to be working and they can't figure out why.
That's because they have affluenza.
Affluenza. That's a great way to put it. I haven't heard that one yet. So one of the reasons that this piece is how we start the training is because it's so important that this really levels the playing field immediately. It allows people to say, oh, we have similar and yet different associations with money. They're positive and negative. They're historical and futuristic, thinking about what's in the future. Opportunity, I heard, was one of them. But thinking about all of those contexts and how they relate to the people that we're working with is hugely important. The toolkit itself, this is what the cover of it looks like, is the purpose of it is, and the training, I should say, the purpose of the training is for people to become familiar with the toolkit. That is at the root of the training. We want them to feel comfortable knowing what's in the toolkit, what will they find, how will they use it, how will they navigate it, and what are the main components in it. The other thing that we're providing as part of this training that's really, I think, very unique is a sense of confidence for the case managers that we work with. It's a sense of confidence around talking about finances. For the most part, what I can tell you is that when people walk in the room, they usually walk in like this, they sit in the back, or they come up to me at the beginning and they say, you know, my boss told me I have to be here, but I really shouldn't be the one teaching. I shouldn't be the one doing this. I can't be the one training. I don't manage my finances very well. I don't know anything about financial management. I don't know anything about budgets. And so what we try to do is immediately dispel those myths. You do know about budgeting. You do know about savings. You may not practice those things. You may not apply them in your own life, but that doesn't mean you don't know about them and you don't know about the value of them. So for some people, we talk about what are some of the very basic things that we know, what are some of the things that people we assume know and may not. So even budgeting, thinking about that, there are both there's lots of rules around what you should and shouldn't put in your budget, what it should look like, what percentages, all of these things. And yet a budget itself is just a way for you to manage your money. There doesn't have to be rules. So helping people understand that you create the rules, you create the framework, and then providing a tool that says, here's one way to look at it. How would we fill this out for you and your money and your situation? So it's a great toolkit in that sense, providing that confidence, helping people walk out of the room and say, I want to go talk to my spouse, my sister, my friend. I don't care who they're talking to about this toolkit. What we're doing is we're changing the narrative of finances. We're making it acceptable to talk about financial management, to talk about decisions that you're making, and to share those tips and tricks. I spend a lot of time in these trainings telling them all of the bad decisions that I've made in my life. All of the things that I didn't learn, all of the sort of educational components that I didn't learn, and because I didn't learn them, what those decisions I made were, and how I'm now having to fix them. And sharing that, and we encourage all of our trainers to share their stories, share their experiences, share what their friends are doing, because this helps us humanize that money is personal. Every decision that we're making is personal for every single person. It's different. How you manage your money, my guess is every single person in this room, you're managing it differently because you have different inputs and different, thank you, outputs, right, in, out, got it. So thinking about that for folks is a huge piece of this training. So why case managers? This is one of the questions that we often get, and what is the definition of a case manager? At the root of this training and the root of what CFPB is after is they're saying and acknowledging, we know that there are financial experts in your community. Many of your financial institutions offer financial education. Many of your community partners are offering financial education. And yet, there's a huge number of people who are not walking through the door of a financial institution or a financial educator to get that education. And yet, they are walking through the doors of their case managers' offices. They do meet with people on a regular basis. And they trust those people. So they've identified this unique group of people in the community who have access to the individuals that we're trying to reach and the trust of those individuals. And they are saying, this is an opportunity to have a new conversation. And I want to be clear, we're not asking case managers to become financial experts. In fact, I explicitly tell them, do not walk out of here and tell your friends that you just became a financial expert. You should not be giving financial advice. We want them to start the conversation, to provide a tool, and then pass it off to the expert. Get them in the door. Help them walk through that door. Help them take that first step. So that's why we've identified case managers. Now, defining case manager, they get pretty specific about what they're looking for. They were really specific in the pilot round last year. This year, what we're doing is we've broadened that. And we asked the question of, do you work with people? Mm-hmm. You should come to this training. Do you teach financial education?
Yeah.
You should come to this training. So we are looking for people who work with people and people who do not teach financial education. That's our target. Really and truly. So we are working with our parent resource centers. We're working with Head Start family coordinators. We're working with DHS self-sufficiency folks. We are working with our jobs community partners. We worked with everyone in the Goodwill staff that was not a prosperity planner, because the prosperity planners do this for a living, so it's too much for them. So anyone who, this is not their job to talk about finances, we want them in this training, because they may have an opportunity with that client. They may or they may not, but if something comes up, we want them to take the opportunity and not shy away from it. Yeah?
Work with law enforcement on parole and probation?
You know, we haven't, but that would be a great group of folks. We're in our second round of providing this training now that they've gotten the updated toolkit, and so we're starting to ask those questions of who else would want this. Now, I will also tell you at the same time, we are getting calls, I'm getting them weekly, people asking me and saying, do you have something that I can provide my staff, financial education? Can you come in? We've redefined what health in our office means, and we want it to include financial health. Can you help us with that? These are the types of tools that we can provide to HR managers. They don't have to be financial experts, and they definitely don't want to be making financial recommendations, but can they provide their staff a tool? Can they provide someone a little peace of mind and a referral? Absolutely. And so that's where this toolkit and this training has been hugely helpful for folks in our community. So, we're going to take a minute here to do another little interactive. And I'm going to ask you, what's financial empowerment mean? What does it mean to you?
I'll get to retire one day. It's not like you have to have a part-time job.
Okay, retirement.
When I want to travel. Just feeling in control.
My kid's not having to ask me for money.
Kids not asking for money?
For options.
Yeah.
Self-sufficiency.
My kid's not putting me in a nursing home.
Even having the balance of, I have my savings, but I'm not living my life now. Like, I don't want to have to put all my money away, but I want to still be able to do a hobby or go out to dinner once in a while or something where I don't feel completely trapped to that future. And
Yeah.
a little bit of balance with it.
Mm-hmm.
Confidence about making decisions.
Okay, confidence.
Choice.
Oh wait, that's what my husband Joe would think.
How is financial empowerment different than financial education, literacy, capability,
Having the education and knowledge.
personal ownership? What was that?
Having the knowledge.
The knowledge.
Well, financial empowerment is more about like the end state. And financial literacy or financial education is the tool to get you to those things.
Yeah,
It's relational, not transactional.
it's relational, not transactional. I like that. Anything else? So these ideas of financial education, financial literacy, financial capacity, and other terms that we often use, they often relate to, do you know how to do what the actions are? Have you learned the tips, the skills, the very basics? Financial empowerment wants to take it one step further and says, are you applying that? Do you have the confidence to take that step? Do you have not only the knowledge, but the ability and the motivation to do something more with your personal finances? Are you going to learn what a budget is and then apply your money to a budget? Are you going to then get so excited about your budget and success about that and then create a savings account? Are you then going to be able to save for something very specific that gets you to the next step, maybe a better car that can allow you to get to a different type of job? So thinking about and helping people understand that financial empowerment is more than just the education. And that's what we're trying to get to, specifically with case managers, is we actually want them to jump straight to the empowerment and say, we want you to motivate your people. Get them to say, I want to go and take a financial education class. I want to learn how to do these things. And help them see what that end result could look like. What's the imagined future? What are they working towards? What's the dream? What's the goal? How are we going to get there? And what you do by doing that is you create that gap that says, who can teach me that? Where can I learn that? And we provide that connection. So jumping straight to the financial empowerment. So how's the toolkit set up? There's really two parts of it. The first part is a lot of introductory stuff. It's assessments. It's understanding cultural differences between how people come to money from different cultures, different communities, understanding that our country and how we deal with money is different than other countries. Our culture and not talking about money is different and the same than other countries. And then how you use the toolkit. So we spend really the first half of the training getting comfortable with the toolkit before we ever jump into talking about tools themselves. I would say Module 2 and Module 3, assessing the situation is more than just assessing your client, but it actually starts with assessing yourself. So it provides a test that says, and it asks you to go through and say, how comfortable are you with a budget? Do you have a savings account? Do you have a goal that you're working towards? So thinking about some of those questions, and then you ask the case managers to reflect that says, how did it feel to take that test? For the most part, we're hearing things like, I knew more than I thought I did. I'm doing more than I thought I was. I didn't know that this is, that it could be this simple to share this information. And then we drop into how do we assess our clients and what are the opportunities for assessment. So the toolkit provides, and I think it does a nice job of balancing this idea of here is a model, but you don't have to hand the test to your client and say, here, fill this out, and then we'll talk about this in a minute, and I'll wait. Because that might not be effective. You may have a client that's motivated that says, I want, yeah, let's fill that out and I'll answer that question. Or you may already have questions on your intake form that you can just add one more question. Or you can utilize their answers to start a conversation. And so it really starts to look at what are the resources you already have access to and how can you apply this tool and where are those points of starting the conversation. So we're really looking for points of conversation. And then we practice starting the conversation. So having case managers sit next to each other and say, okay, you're the client, I'm the case manager. Somehow figure out a way to get into a financial conversation with them. Practice that. Why are they coming into you? It's not to talk about finances, but let's practice picking up that topic. Let's practice what it looks like. So we spend some time with them walking through what does that look like, what does it feel like? And there's both examples, again, examples of conversations in the toolkit, as well as questions that you could ask. So thinking about that person sitting across the table. Now, the rest of the toolkit are the list of things that you would normally see in financial education. Setting goals, saving for unexpected emergencies, managing your income benefits, paying other bills, managing cash flow. One of the great things about this toolkit that I think is, again, unique for United Ways is thinking about how can you then connect your partnerships and your partners who are doing this work to different pieces of the toolkit. So for us, looking at the evaluating financial service providers, we're partnering with Bank On. Talking about managing income and benefits brings up, there's a whole piece on earned income tax credit. So we spent some time talking about local resources. You've got this national product, lots of great tools, but an opportunity to localize it. Throw a page in there about the programs that you have access to. Make sure that people know about how they can get connected to a unique set of resources in your community and what you have access to. One word of caution and warning. It's a lot of information. It's a lot about finances. And back to the topic of when I show up in a room, people usually get scared because they don't want to talk about finances or taxes or whatever else I may happen to be there to talk about. But it's great resources, we just don't want to overwhelm them. So when you go on and you look for your money or goals and you pull up the resources, what you're going to find is that the training is 8 hours long. How many of you want to sit in an 8-hour financial training? No hands. So one of the things that we've done, we did the 8-hour training twice last year, and it's a lot. We did it for the pilot, we did it to see how it worked, and by the end of the day, even if you hit that peak of excitement and people are like, yeah, I can do this, this is great. You're by hour 7, oh my God, you lost them, they're done. Now they're like, oh no, not touching it. They're back to that. They've got too many resources. So we've actually cut it down from an 8-hour training to a 4-hour training, which is significant, but we spend the first 2 hours on the introductory, so we did not change the introductory modules. They are hugely important for setting the stage, developing the confidence, and that's not something we're willing to negotiate on. So what we did instead is we picked what are the 3 modules that we think are going to be the most likely to be used by a case manager in our community. So we've chosen 3 modules that we go deep on, and then we teach the case managers how to use the toolkit so that if they want to go take on the other topics, they know how to utilize the toolkit and get the information. It's all in there. I don't have to stand up here and tell them how to use it. It's all in the toolkit. And so we teach them how to use the toolkit, get confident with the toolkit, get to a place that they know they can read about it and implement it themselves. And so that's my one word of caution. The 8-hour training is not bad, it's great, but it's a lot. And so for people who, if you're targeting people who don't normally talk about finances, asking them to come to an 8-hour training about finances is really daunting. One of the ways we're trying to augment that, because you lose some of the training by cutting out 4 hours of it, is to create a communication line that they would get a monthly email that says, here's one tip on a module that we didn't cover in the training. Here's something that a case manager came up against when they got into this conversation. Here's a great resource we just learned about that we want to share with you. Tell your clients about this. Help them understand who's in our community. So finding that, and then what it does is thinking about that constant communication. How are we engaging them? How are we creating opportunities to remain top of mind so that they think, oh yeah, maybe I will pull that toolkit off the shelf. Maybe I will use that resource. I forgot that I had that available to me. So that's really one of our goals. Second piece about the toolkit, hugely important. Again, because we're not making financial experts, but we do want them to refer. The CFPB, in their original outreach information, said, we want you to just create sort of a manual, a 1-pager or a 2-pager that says these are the resources available. Can anyone in this room think of another way that we might connect people to resources available in our communities? Oh, come on.
211.
211. Yes, 211. Do you all know about 211? It's this great resource that United Way's partner with.
How do you get a hold of it?
I know, we were trying to make it hard. It's not hard, it's really not hard. So this is one of the things that we've done. Again, CFPB said, don't use 211, it's too generic, it's too cold of a handoff. And we said, no. What if we trained our case managers to use 211 so that they make a warm handoff, but they get access to referrals? And so we're finding ways, and we're working with 211 to figure out how do we identify our partners that are in 211 as partners of the toolkit. So whether that is some kind of taxonomy, some kind of little toggle in their program that says we're a participant of this. For the most part, we're directing people to 2 of our financial educators in the community, but there are more resources, and we want people to have access to that. So we are working with 211, and we told CFPB that's not negotiable. Again, we're not going to print a piece of paper that as soon as you print it, it's out of date. Because we want our case managers to be able to go online and get the most up-to-date information. That's on 211. So that's one piece. And thinking about your 211 partnerships, how do we work with 211? How do we make sure that our partners are on 211, that their information is updated, that we know we're getting access to the right person? Is very, very, very important. The situation assessment, so I said there's 2 tools on this. The first one is financial empowerment for the case managers themselves. And that tool, it is an actual test assessment that they take that is designed to help them understand how much knowledge they already have. Once they have that, then they go through and they look at the client assessment. One of the things that we're trying to help them understand is you're getting a picture of conditions today in this person's life. What is happening right now? That's what we're addressing. If the one thing that they're really thinking about is how I'm going to make that car payment by next week and I don't have the cash for it, we're probably not going to talk about the importance of saving. It's too late. We need to talk about how are we paying bills, how are we managing money right now. You can maybe talk about savings later, but it's designed to be a just-in-time, just-in-the-moment tool that says, this is the issue right now, here's how I assess it, and then which module do I jump to? So every single question comes with the answer of which module would you go to if you wanted to look for the answer. So that's a nice part about this toolkit, is it comes with all of the answers. You don't have to search for them, you don't have to guess, you don't have to know the toolkit so well that you have to figure out the answer to those questions, but you can actually look up through that assessment and say, this is what my person's worried about, this is where I'll find that module. And so understanding that piece. The other thing is helping our case managers understand that they don't have to use the assessment. They don't have to use a specific tool. They don't have to use the papers that are in there. Some of these are just going to be ideas for them. Some of them are going to use them verbatim. And so helping them feel confident with their style and their communication and their type of case management is also really important. So, one of the tools. Oh, there's actually one other piece about this. The toolkit, like I said, it's a just-in-time, is not a curriculum. So the other thing that we run up against is people talking about it as a curriculum and says, oh yes, I just learned this great thing. What's a curriculum? Does anyone know? How is a curriculum different than a toolkit?
Schedule of training.
It's a schedule of training. What else? It's progressive. It's designed to build on itself. So you learn one thing, and then you're going to learn the next, and then you're going to learn the next. The beauty of this toolkit is that everything is self-contained. You don't have to learn budgeting in order to talk about savings. You don't have to learn savings in order to talk about credit repair. And so helping case managers figure out and identify exactly where they're going in the toolkit is the reason that it's not a curriculum, because we don't want them to feel like they have to get through the whole thing to get to that end result. We want to address the person in their situation right then. So Module 6 is about setting goals. And so this is what we talk about with setting goals, is what are goals? What does it mean to set a SMART goal? Has anyone ever heard of the SMART goal model? A couple of folks around the room. So SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-framed. Relevant can also be reframed in some ways to be important to that person. So if they're important to you, then it's relevant. If it's something that's going to motivate you, then it's relevant. And so finding those goals, identifying what does it mean to be specific, and walking that person through the specificity of saying, tell me more about that. What are you saving? How much exactly? By when? What does it look like? Making it measurable. What's the amount in dollars that you're going to save, if that's what it is? Is it attainable? Are you trying to save $1 million this year? Is that attainable? Maybe not. Maybe it is. I don't know. They might be coming from a different position than I am. Is it relevant? Again, is it important to them? Thinking about, again, and then the last one is time framed. Really getting specific about timing. By when will you have this goal met? And talking about and helping them understand how to make a SMART goal. And so we look at different goals. I want to get out of credit card debt. How many people have heard that before? Friends, family, maybe you've said it. Is that a SMART goal? Why?
It's not specific.
It's not time.
It's not time, it's not specific. What else? It's not measurable. I want to get out of credit card debt. How quickly can you just sort of give up on that if you don't see any measure of success? Well, I made a payment on it and the credit card debt's still there. Bummer, dude. Not successful. Let's find something that is successful. I will pay down $1,000 of my debt in the next year. That's a successful goal. That's a SMART goal. The baby's face tells it all. So really helping our clients see the difference between what is a wish, what is a hope, and what is a goal. How can we get to an actual goal? What's it going to look like? What's reasonable? What's manageable? Can you save $500? One of the activities that we do with the savings piece is we have everyone, again, with your papers, is you'll write down all of the things that might be emergencies. What would come up as an emergency in your life? And so we have everyone write down all the things, from your tires blow out to your roof is leaking to all of those things that show up that aren't really expected. Some of them you kind of know. But the bottom line is emergencies will happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so what we then do is we look at those lists and we say, how many of them can be addressed with $500? For the most part, 50% or more of the things that we consider emergencies that will come up on a regular basis can be addressed with $500 or more. Now, thinking about that, what's the common knowledge on how much you should have saved in a saving account?
6 months of operating expenses.
6 months. Does that feel very attainable to someone who's not living with very much extra money at the end of the month? Does $500 feel maybe a little bit more attainable? Yeah. A lot of people can think about saving $500. $500 will make a huge difference for an immediate emergency that comes up. Once they have that $500 in their account, then maybe they can get $550. Then maybe $550 turns into $600. Or maybe they have an emergency and for the first time they're able to pay for it. Huge win. And so helping people see and understand that even though there's common knowledge that says you need, I think it says now 6 to 8 months of your income or of your expenses in savings, that feels huge for a lot of people. So how do we get that down to something that's reasonable, manageable, and possible for our clients to work with? Creating a goal that is measurable for them. So what resources do you have available to you right now? The toolkit is one. I'm going to give you a copy of it today, but it's also online. You can download it. It's a PDF. It's in English and Spanish. You also have access to the workshop slides. And here's what I'm going to tell you about the workshop slides. They're awesome. Well, actually, the notes in them are awesome. The slides themselves, you can sort of amp them up a little bit. They're kind of just generic slides. But the notes section, they provide every single detail. How are you going to set up the room? What are you going to put on the tables? What are the materials required for this activity? Here's 3 different activities. Decide as a trainer what you're most comfortable sharing, the way that you train. So those workshop slides are fantastic for creating something that is unique to your trainers, to your volunteers, and what they have access to. It also creates consistency across the training, across your community. You also have access to the recorded Train the Trainer webinar. That is a couple-hour training, and what it will do is walk you through all of the parts of the toolkit. It will not teach you how to do the training specifically. That's where the notes in the presentation are. So I think a couple of our trainers were surprised that they didn't walk away feeling like they knew how to do the training, and they only felt like they knew what was in the toolkit. So I want you to have that sort of going into it, is understand that looking at those workshop slides is where you're going to understand how to do the training. And it's very explicit, it's very well done. They've done a lot of work trying to identify adult learning styles. How do you mix it up in the room? How do you get people moving around? One of my favorite activities is the good debt, bad debt, where we ask people, is it good debt or bad debt? So like student loan, good debt or bad debt? Car loan, good debt, bad debt. These will be some of the greatest debates in your training. Some really incredible debates. Or looking at needs versus wants versus things that you have to pay for. There's no question. More great debates about cell phones. Need, want, requirement. Depends on the person. Everyone is different. Everyone has a different opinion. And so really we spend the whole time in the training acknowledging and understanding that everyone comes to finances and financial management differently. You get an implementation guide and tools in the template for the referral. So they have some options for you to look at referrals for your community. Again, I encourage you to look at 211 and try to find ways that you can utilize your 211 system because we want to maintain that consistency across our work with United Ways. We also have the pre and post training. I've got copies of those if anyone's interested. Essentially what that does is it gives us a sense when you walk in the room, we ask everyone to fill out the survey that says, what's your confidence level with finances? What do you know? Do you feel like you know a lot or a little about budgeting? You know a lot or a little bit about savings? Getting a sense of where you're at. And then at the end, we ask them, are you feeling more confident, less confident, somewhat more confident? So again, getting a scale of how do you feel. So the one difference that I will say between an 8-hour training and a 4-hour training, you're gonna get a lot more somewhat confidence than confidence. Because we don't go through the whole toolkit, and when you go through the whole toolkit, people feel more confident using the whole toolkit. So that's one of the changes that we saw between an 8-hour and a 4-hour training, is more somewhat confidence. But we expected that. We want them to be confident in 3 areas, not in everything. And then you can get on their email list for updates. So all of this is available to you right now. It's on consumerfinance.gov. Their website has great resources. You can also just Google search Your Money, Your Goals, and it will pop up as a resource. And I am also willing to share what we've done to create the 4-hour training and any of our resources that we've created. I'm happy to answer questions for folks and help you figure out what's right for your community. We have, I am a trained trainer in our community, and we have 4 additional financial experts who have done this. They made an exception for me in being allowed to give the training at the first year because they wanted only financial experts, which technically I am not, and yet we made a case that we're working with financial expertise, and we have an understanding that it would allow us to be able to provide this training, and it's important that United Way is at the table helping with this. And so right now, it's publicly available, everyone can get access to it, and we hope that you will. Even if you're just going and checking out what's in the toolkit, see if it's right for you, see if there's a resource for you, or for your financial stability work. It's again, something that it's easy to put up on a website, it's easy to make access to this resource, and the more people that have it, what we're seeing is the conversation is changing. People are walking out of the room and saying, wow, I learned something about saving or budgeting, or this is a great new tool I didn't know about. So they're walking out of the room talking about their finances. Who are they gonna go talk to? I wanna go talk to my spouse about this. I wanna go talk to my friend. Or I wanna talk to anybody that will ask that's what I'm really going for, is who's willing to share this resource? Who's willing to leave the room and change the narrative of we don't talk about finances to let's talk about finances. Let's talk about how to tackle that and where are the best resources for you to be successful. Yeah.
Are you doing any measurement around this?
Yeah, so most of the measurement is coming from the surveys, is getting a sense of what folks have learned. There's also a 30 days following the training that there's a survey that says how often did you use it, which tools did you use. We're also working with, we've got a volunteer in our community who recently decided that she wanted a break from working and she wanted to volunteer for us and create online modules and some tracking for us. So she's sitting in all the trainings and identifying the types of questions case managers are asking and what types of online training we can provide after the fact. And then it's communication with folks. We've asked them to provide a certain level of response and feedback because we think the toolkit's great. Our financial experts think the toolkit's great. But what we don't know yet and what we're learning is if you, the case manager, are gonna leave this training and actually pull that off the shelf when the client comes in and has a question about finances. That's what we're trying to learn. And we only know that if they tell us. So in this second round, we didn't get great feedback in the first year from the case managers that got the training. So in this second round of training, we're really driving that home. When I email you, I need you to respond because we want to know if it's useful. If you're not using it, if it's not important to you, we want to know that. Because if it's just a great resource but nobody uses it, then it's not actually that great of a resource. And so helping folks work with us to understand all of our experts think it's great, but now we need to turn out to the community and say, is it really? Is this effective? Are your clients using it? Is it helpful for them? Yeah.
So what did you do to help get buy-in from the different organizations that have the case managers to say, here's one more thing, here's one more tool that you can use for your clients? What, if any, pushback did you get, and then how was that resolved?
That's a great question. And it's a mixed bag. So some people are saying, I'm sending you every one of my case managers and they will be trained and they will like it. Other people are showing up going, I was told I have to be here. And so we've really had a mix of folks because, especially if we're working with DHS self-sufficiency folks, they're jam-packed in their jobs. They have so much already on their plates, and we're giving them another tool and resource to say, we want you to have another conversation. If it comes up, don't shy away from it. In fact, we want you to spend time. So at the beginning of the training, we do actually spend time acknowledging that with them and saying, you may meet with clients on a monthly basis, which means you don't actually have a whole lot of opportunity to have that conversation. If you're meeting with somebody on a weekly basis, you might have more opportunities. And working with folks to understand what is the interest in their organization. So again, the difference between last year with our pilot was we just put it out and said, who wants to participate? We've got this opportunity, it's free, anyone can come. And so we got a really big mix. Now what we're doing is we're reaching out to the higher ups, to the supervisors, to the managers, to folks that says, we have this opportunity, we think it will be helpful for your case managers, but we need your buy-in to make sure that it's useful. So that's where Goodwill, their prosperity managers calling and saying, I want all of my case managers in this training. I've got the head of Health and Human Services calling and saying, I want all my jobs people in this training. July 1, we're changing how they do their work. The county folks are calling and saying, when we do intake, we often are asking about some of the hardships, and we provide all of these tools for folks, but we haven't had anything that's really official. So can we use these tools? Can we pull them out and create a packet with them? Absolutely, but we'd love for you to come get trained first. So for us at this point in the second round, that's one of the things we're working on is the buy-in factor and making sure that we're getting organizational buy-in first and then case manager buy-in.
That's great.
One or two more questions?
We had a conversation about this recently, so at the 80% reduction in homelessness, it actually, so we now have structures in place to do housing first, et cetera, but it really hasn't addressed that underlying financial literacy piece, which, but part of the conversation was all of the agencies want this. They want it for their employees as much as for anything else, because they're not, their employees are struggling too. So I think there is sort of an open door for a lot of agencies we work with anyway.
There is, and for us, conveniently, I will say, we've got this tool for case managers. At the same time that this is going live, one of our local partners has just received a major FINRA foundation to do financial education in the workplace. So for all of those companies, big major companies that are looking for financial education, we're running them through our Neighborhood Economic Development Corporation, and that's, so if you're really looking for employee financial education, then we want them to go through the workplace program. If you're looking for client interaction, then we want you to come through this program. So we actually have both, so that we can delineate for folks. Yeah, and we will have results on that in the future. It's just going live, like I think April 1st. But that FINRA grant's going to allow us to do that in a pilot sense again. All right. Thank you very much. I'll have toolkits at the end.
So when we break, one person from each organization, one person from each United Way can go and grab a toolkit from Elena.
It's right here.
Let's just give our speakers another big round of applause. It's so rich to learn what everybody's doing, and I think I heard somebody say you can't replicate anything from another place and make it fit in your community, but it's about kind of learning from what's the strengths of everybody are and helping that guide the conversations that you're having in your own community. A couple of quick things, and then we'll let you out a good 15 minutes early. Remember that in your evaluation. So I'm going to send that out Monday or Tuesday. When I have 15 of them, I'll send you the slide deck. Okay, and then also I learned a big lesson with Sarah at the lobby day when we forgot to ask for name tags back. So please drop your name tags by the door or leave them on your table and we'll get them. And please, please, please travel safe on your way home and have an excellent weekend. Thank you all.